welcome to Inside the Middle East. I'm Hala Garani, coming to you today from the heart of bustling Cairo, and it is very crowded and very hot today. You certainly feel the difference when you come from another Arab capital, just how many people there are. Well, you may remember a few years ago we did a story on Sudanese refugees fleeing the violence in Darfur, trying to find a better and peaceful life here in Egypt. Well, in the last few years, many of them say they've been disappointed, that they face discrimination here, and in some cases racism, so much so that some of them have even fled to Israel, where they say they don't face a much warmer welcome there. Our first story is about the desperation of refugees fleeing their homeland to try to find a better life elsewhere. Somalis, for instance, are going to Yemen. It's a journey fraught with perils and dangers. And what they find in Yemen, the poorest country in the Arab world, is sometimes not at all what they expected. Our Ben Wiedemann reports from Sana'a.
They wash up on the shores of Yemen with disturbing regularity. Bodies of refugees fleeing war, chaos, and poverty in the Horn of Africa. In the last 2 decades, tens of thousands of Somalis, Ethiopians, and others have braved the Red Sea crossing to reach this remote corner of a remote land. Their journey is fraught with danger. Rough seas can sink the flimsy, overcrowded boats that ply the waters between Yemen and Somalia. But the perils posed by nature pale next to the brutality and greed of those who, for around $40 per person, offer the only escape. Mohammed Abdil Bukr left the Somali capital Mogadishu with his family 2 years ago and paid for the passage across the Red Sea. He recalls that when their boat was within sight of the coast of Yemen, the sailors ordered the passengers to jump overboard. When Mohammed protested, they beat him with rifle butts and then threw everyone into the sea. Mohammed survived, but his wife and 5 children, including the youngest, his 2-year-old son, drowned. The trauma has left him unable to work. Tormented by nightmares, he tells me, he can barely sleep. For those who make it, an uncertain future awaits. Around 10,000, mostly Somalis, live in El Kharaz camp, an old Russian military base a 3-hour drive from the city of Aden, now run by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, the UNHCR. At Kharaz, the UN tries to create the semblance of a normal life for the refugees, running workshops where shawls are made, baskets woven. Purpose given to the time that passes slowly as they wait for something better. In the basket workshop, we met Mariam Adam and her 2-month-old daughter, Iqra. Mariam, now 18, left Somalia in May 2005, making the 2-day crossing when she was 4 months pregnant with the child of a gunman who had raped her in Mogadishu. Like so many here, she's afraid to go home and has little hope of being resettled elsewhere. Diversions in Kharaz are few. Cards, dominoes, table tennis, and one television when there's electricity help pass the time. The frustration of camp life, as oppressive as the heat and the dust, constant as the wind. Fatima lives at the desolate edge of Kharaz with her 3 sons. Everyone here has mental problems, she tells me. Some talk to themselves, others beat their children and torment their wives. We're going crazy. This is not a life. With newer conflicts and newer refugees elsewhere, officials here worry the world has lost interest in the Horn of Africa. Jihan Bawazir works for a Yemeni humanitarian group that distributes UN food and other goods. Every month she sees supplies fluctuate wildly as donor attention and generosity is diverted by crises elsewhere. Jihan says some months there's no food to give. Contributions from Yemeni businesses help make up some of the shortfall, but Yemen is a poor country, by far the poorest in the Arabian Peninsula. Saad, who lives near Kharaz, says he could use with some help as well, though he says he supports the Yemeni government's policy of allowing Somalis and others to live and work in his country. For the refugees, life in Yemen is a dilemma. Conditions are rough, sometimes hardly bearable, but returning home is, for most, just not an option. It's a dilemma UNHCR Community Services Officer Aisha Saeed knows only too well.
When you ask them if they want to go home, they say no, because no security is still in Somalia. The situation is deteriorating day by day. And everybody wants to go home if peace is there. But as long as peace is not there, I think even for them it's more problem this peace, this security. They can survive with difficult conditions, but they cannot survive without security. For them, security is very important. And if Somalia will continue like this, they will stay here. Where to go? Yep.
But some refugees are going home. With a thumbprint on a UN contract, Abdi Juma agrees to return to Somalia. He's been in Kharaz for 9 years, but now needs a costly medical operation he can't afford in Yemen. I'm going back for my health, he says. My tribe will help me. Here I don't have relatives to support me. In a few weeks, the UNHCR will give Abdi $50 and fly him home. Others are putting down seemingly permanent roots. The Yemeni government estimates more than 165,000 refugees from the Horn of Africa, mostly from Somalia, live in the country. Many have settled in the Basatin neighborhood of Aden, a sort of little Mogadishu. They earn livings, running shops, doing odd jobs. I ask fruit and vegetable vendor Hamdi if he'll ever return to Somalia. If it becomes peaceful, he replies, I'll go back. But if it's still a mess, I'll stay here. Hamdi and many others seem resigned to a life of exile in Yemen, a country whose shores hold the graves of those who didn't make it. Ben Wiedemann in Yemen for Inside the Middle East.
There's a lot more ahead on Inside the Middle East. We are driving to one of the most famous landmarks, really, in the world. It's a trip back in time, here and in another part of the region. We'll explain a bit later in the show. Stay with us.